Congratulations to the flag of the United States and to the republic. One nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice. We'll do a roll call.
Commissioner Ron Williams,
Here.
Commissioner Rocky Ford,
Here.
Paul King,
Here.
Travis King, Ronnie Frazier, Tom Odom,
Here.
Toby Witt.
Here. We have a quorum. We'll go ahead and start with the public comment. Chairman, I guess. Do anybody don't have any public hearing? Bill, you have anything to say? This morning?
Oh, no, wait there.
Well, I never hear with lack of something to say.
Mr. Chairman, but it's all about this.
Okay, Stacy, let's go ahead with the update on the North Florida Mega Industrial Park.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. As you can see in your packet, I give the 5-week look ahead, take us to the end of August. It's moving along real well. They poured some chlorine tank foundation. We're about to start later this week. We'll start erecting the 10-foot walls, doing some leak testing. The weather's kind of throwing us for a loop a little bit. It's real wet out there. So the excavating and clearing and the development's going a little bit slower because we're having to dry a lot of the dirt. So we kind of wanted to give everybody a look and see what we're at.
Are they on schedule pretty much, or you think? Or?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. They're hitting all their benchmarks, all the cheaper metrics. They're hitting every one of them so far. So the weather's the only thing that's delaying them.
Or y'all have anything to add on that?
Yeah, we want to, does everybody have a handout yet? We'll talk about the master plan element. I talked with Stacy this week, since he already had the agenda out. So kind of when we hit each one of these areas, we'll talk about the master plan part of it.
Yeah. Okay.
And then, North Florida is the port drawn in the 11/17. You got some more detail up front about Ellisville. But mostly North Florida is, I think, the water plant and the water system, the well test level 3, still got a little work on that, making sure what sort of treatment that we need. The well has great capacity, but looking at what sort of, treatment system related to the water quality. So we need some more sampling related to that. And then looking at the infrastructure, putting the dual 12-inch force main, water main in. And I think one of the key things will be is how this thing grows out. Like at first, we're going to put lines in on the left-hand side, the west end. But as it builds out, and I'm kind of asking openly here, is that I don't think we know the exact layout, but we show the loops. We've done some preliminary, takeoffs and what sort of cost estimates that might be. But where the funding is going to come for a loop, I don't think it's been determined yet, right? If anyone correct me. But we know that what we're looking at is building that kind of a backbone coming from the water plant from the right, dual water mains, and then we have the growth that's initially going to happen on the west end. But what's in the middle is going to have to be determined as developers come. And I think that will decide some things. And then the sewer side, we kind of fine-tuned on the location of the lift station that will pick up the initial customers that are coming in. And that's kind of where we're at on North Florida. We're continuing to work on trying to get the 30% package out related to that. And then they go for, I think, what was stop points and get input from everybody where we're going. Is there anything to add on that?
Yeah, the first phase, based on Jennifer's work as far as economic development goes, there's a client that will go in on the very western side of the industrial park here where the rail spur is, that's already constructed. So you know, another thing about the plan is it is fluid because we had it a little bit different than that and reconfigured it because even though they've got parcels laid out, it seems like working with Weyerhaeuser and all that is really just for discussion purposes and not hard and fast. So they've been kind of adjusting parcel areas and based on climate and all that. So that very left little black square is where our lift stations are planned right now. The first phase will be that lift station there, along with the water lines to get all the way over there to that. So that's their first client. They do have some interest, I think, on the other side of the rail spur right now that they're exploring, but at present, as far as we know, we don't have anything definite on the rest of the park as far as building that. You know, the county does have a grant to build the first leg of the parkway there for right up to about where that rail spur, if it extended over to the road there, would be at 1,000 feet. Kevin, is that about right? So, and then that's going to create another, I think, another point of at least discussion with DOT and all that, because it does create another rail crossing with that spur. And even though you say it's a county road, DOT still has jurisdiction over all rail crossings, over any transportation corridor. And they're, as the county knows from the previous work, they're very negative toward that grade crossing. So that's all going to have to be worked through as well. Just to kind of give y'all some perspective on that. A few years ago, I think it was Jackson County had a similar park like this, and they went in and built the road, built the rail crossing because they were doing it with their own money. And as soon as DOT found out about it, they shut it down. So just because it's, you know, county road or whatnot doesn't take them out of the jurisdiction on it. So, but that being said, I think all that can be worked through. I don't know that's going to really change a whole lot. You know, lift stations could adjust a little bit here or there, but in general, that's going to be the backbone of the whole park here. And it, you know, we got capacity, we've got the ability to expand that as necessary. I know there's other discussions. We don't have anything definite on that, but we do have a 2 million gallon a day water use permit out there. The wastewater plant is 500,000 gallons. So at some time, you're going to be looking to having to upgrade the wastewater plant to ever catch up to the water plant. Now, at one point, there was discussions of going to 10 million gallons. I think that may happen, could possibly happen one day, but I don't know that I see that happening in the planning horizon based on what we're seeing today.
Probably in our 10-year plan.
You know, that's going to, you know, interject other issues that we've been talking about with the larger regional utility that we've had agreed together is you saw how long it took to get to the 2 million gallons and the hoops that had to be jumped through to get that. So, yeah, that's going to have to be planned ahead of time. The issue with that, and we'll get to that a little bit more in Ellisville too, is the fluidity of all this. You can, you know, you go out there and the user that's going out there right now is not a big water user. They're not going to draw a whole lot off the system. But you change that user to a Campbell Soup place, and it's a whole different animal. So we've got to be quick on our feet with a lot of this stuff, and that's not easy to do sometimes when, you know, we're having to deal with public agencies.
Safety, you got anything else on the water, make it necessary?
No, sir. No, sir. I mean, it's going well. You just heard Brian and Greg talk about the water side. They're still working on that goal. Wastewater plant's moving along well. So
Okay, anybody got any questions on it? Can we move forward? All right, let's, go ahead and move on to the Ellisville, full white water line, I think.
Yes, sir. This is just more of a verbal update. Want to kind of let everybody know the last 2 weeks ago, when we had our meeting right there at the end, a lot of people had to leave because it was kind of ran a little bit long. I just want to let everybody know that August 1st was the last day for questioning for our vendors on this. And August 8th, so next week, the bids will be brought and closed out and we'll start examining the bid. So that's where we stand on that. We've got quite a few people interested in it. I know of, 6 or 7 different vendors that, make inquiries about it.
Greg, you want to talk about that or plan?
I would, let's just let Stacy finish up with Ellisville, then let's just kind of talk about master plan related stuff.
Of it as a whole, okay. Go ahead, let's move on down to, wastewater treatment plant expansion, that's still kidding.
Yes, sir. You'll see in your packet, I printed off the emails that I've been back and forth with Kyle Frust and, John Hero at SDS. Or excuse me, Arcadis. This, the second page, you'll see a listing of what we have left on our punch list. Once this punch list gets done, we will be operating. We kind of want to give everybody an update, kind of let everybody know that we are moving forward. It is going, it's going slow because of some certain failures on some people's part. But the punch list is made up and they're working on it as we speak. That's Friday and after Monday and Wednesday.
So what's your time frame you think on that plant being operation?
Hoping by next week and a half to 2 weeks. It's going to be depending on how MAC gets their crews out there and how much time they allow their crews to stay on site instead of working 2 days and then going someplace for 2 days. Okay.
Hey, I was reading through this over the weekend, Tom, and, I noticed there was some elevation issues.
Sure. Wherever they
Now,
are.
how did that happen?
I think that was an engineering issue. So the new plant has a weir system, a clean out weir system on it. It's 5 foot 11 inches higher than the old facility. Thus you have a 5 foot 11 inch difference in head. So to compensate, we had to valve off the older plant, restrict flow to force flow into the new facility. So that was a misstep on Davis's.
I was just wondering, because that's, when you're installing, I mean,
That's kind of,
that's the first thing I check is elevations. I mean, so.
and it wasn't caught by MAC when they were installing, so. Like I said, there've been quite a few missteps.
Greg, you want to go with Ellisville?
Do we have anything else on Ellisville, Stacy, as far as the day-to-day stuff?
On the wastewater, no, I got one more update just to let everybody know about the peroxide on the water plant. That permit has been approved and we are getting quotes now for the electrical to, see how much it would cost to install corresponding pumps to the wells to inject the peroxide and get away from ammonia.
Now, this is at the Ellisville water plant. You're gonna go to peroxide there. You already went to peroxide at Fort White, right?
Yes, sir. So we're going to test it in Ellisville and see how functional it is. Hopefully we can make both facilities the exact same process.
That do away with chlorine altogether?
No,
You still gonna have chlorine?
yes, sir.
We'll talk about the plan now for Ellisville.
Yeah, we'll talk about the master plan. I'll kind of start off and I'll let Brian, this part, Kevin's gonna have some involvement with this as well, but, I don't know, about before, last 2 meetings, I think we gave y'all an update on projections on what we see in Ellisville versus some of the other ones. And told you about how quick the pace was. Since then, we've had, Busy Bee project, is a huge expansion and has a very large impact on that system down there. Talking to Stacy and talking to Kevin about that. There's other improvements related to that. And, we got to step and fetch on that pretty quick. It ain't, we need to concentrate on some plant upgrades down there more so than anywhere else if that project is gonna go through. So right now, we've got a map here, but in a couple pages back, there's some aerial photos. DOT is planning or it's gonna require Busy Bee to build an access road, or either the DOT is gonna build it. I'm not sure how that's set up yet, but basically they want to come south of Ellisville on 441. They're not gonna let them utilize those existing driveways that are out there and then put in a signal down past the mini warehouses and build a loop road that comes back into Howell.
So I'm gonna go behind the Wendy's.
It'll go behind.
Yeah, across Howell Road.
Sunspot, the hotel, all that right there, which in reality is gonna create another development corridor. They're gonna push all that traffic that would go to Busy Bee all the way to the south down there and back in that direction there. In addition to that, over next to Love's, the other drawing that we got there, DOT is wanting to construct a truck parking area. They have a severe shortage of truck parking. They want to build that. It's almost like the parking ride you see out here at 90 or down here at 47 for passenger cars, except for trucks. So that would entail basically blowing out that intersection at 238 and doing that. So
Greg, do they have any proposed bathrooms or anything like that at that parking area?
I haven't seen anything on the site plan that Kevin's making.
Okay. Let's kind of back up in time. What Greg just said was a mouthful. We talk about utilities, all these other locations. Ellisville is happening in real time. Everything else is kind of processed. And what Greg indicated, everything's changing very fast. So the Board of County Commissioners were called 8 or 10 months ago. I went in front of the board and said if we dedicate $500,000 annually for passing cars to 247, this would trade out at the intersection improvement at 238. That project is approved and funded, okay? This is what Greg's referring to, signalized intersection 238, truck parking, 75 stalls. To my knowledge, bathrooms are not included. That project is funded and real. But what happened on the B&B side? B&B came, I attended multiple meetings. They are shovel ready in November of 23. They're ready to go. Accommodate the need for B&B, and not only B&B, but B&B in particular. It's over $30 million worth of improvements to that intersection on 41. Well, that was not a reasonable time frame to accommodate when they want to get started. So they took another bite at the apple. They come back, said, we in stock, this is where Meredith comes in. They went to Tallahassee, said, we can't wait 5 years, 5 years later. We're going to go. The alternative plan is this service road with a signalized intersection down south of Mini Warehouse. That is not funded today, but the right people in Tallahassee are working vigorously about for me to stop asking who this person was we were talking with. If you're asking my opinion, that funding will be available immediately. The thought process is that's a Band-Aid to get B&B going, the service road to allow for future improvements, right? So you get one and then you get two. Now, what is the deal changer on that? Let's assume Tallahassee does what they say they're going to do. Let's assume the service road. Greg's exactly right. That creates a whole new animal. And what's important for us to talk about today, Stacy just indicated that within a couple of weeks, you'll be up to 50,000 gallon capacity on the wastewater side. We applied for a grant to go to 75,000. That was before Busy Bee was really in the mix. If all of this shakes out, and I'll get it back to Greg, you're looking at a whole new number for wastewater. You're asking me, you need to skip talking about 175,000, you need to go to about 150,000. Because you're not gonna be able to handle Busy Bee with 50,000 gallons. And that's what Greg was speaking of earlier, master plan. Think the market keeps changing, right? So a year ago, we're going to 50,000, we're going to 10,000, good plan. And then things like B&B, which are good, pops up, right people get involved. All of a sudden, the expansion's going real fast, we're behind the eight ball again. Make sense? So the biggest challenge, Greg and I had discussion the last few days, complete. We are at a whole different level right now in Ellisville. You know, do you wait on grants? Do you find a different funding source? Because it's going to come down to the point that we're going to have to tell a customer, we're not ready.
And I'm gonna tell you what, see, when all this starts developing down there, you know good as I do, there're gonna be more motels coming up in there.
Mr. Sheriff, if you're asking my opinion right now, the right people are involved, I think this is all moving fast.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
It's throwing a huge wrinkle and
I guess my question would be-
we had to shift gears totally.
My question would be though, do we want to continue with package plants?
It is the way. And that's what, in my opinion, this scabbing on based on new information. I want to clarify that. This 25,000 gallons at a time is not going to work.
That's that's kind of.
For clarification, we didn't see this coming.
No, I don't get me wrong, I understand completely. I think we all understand that, but we need to really look at what's the best plan moving forward.
Well, what I'm saying, but this has changed our whole premise that we were looking at before. We were looking at trying to run feeders out and all that. Go to the map we got there, we still got those shown, but really, we kind of looked back. There's a red box here. That is your development area that's county defined for Ellisville. And with that Busy Bee change in there, what we're looking at now is
Double the area.
well, that can expand, but we got to be able to serve that area right there. What we're seeing right now is we can't even serve Busy Bee today.
Right.
Greg, and we have to focus on getting this red box completed out. We need some loops in there, but more importantly, we need huge expansions on our water and our wastewater plant, and we got limited property down there to work.
What will it take to change gears from the package plant to a sewer treatment plant?
Well, I mean, just.
I mean, besides the money.
It's money, it's basically getting a design and getting a piece of property, we can put all that, have that capacity on.
Yeah, I think that's the start. You don't have real estate right now.
I don't have real estate right now. Me and Stacy was talking, there is a piece that DOT has down there. DOT's been thrown in the mix on their wastewater plant, but yeah. Stacy and I were talking right before the meeting. The problem that we got with the DOT wastewater plant is they've got problems today. They got a little bit of capacity left in there. Their permanent capacity is 50,000 gallons.
Yes.
They're running 12 on an average, 20 at a max. So they got some. But the problem is they're constantly exceeding their nitrate level. So they got problems in their plant. Stacy tells me they've also, their spray field has basically not been maintained and all that. So that's not a fix in our, from what we can see so far. So we need land, we need a site to put it on, and then we got to start building.
Well, that's something we need to put on the front burner. We need to find a place, a site. That should be top priority, Kevin. If we start looking in that direction. So, as fast as this interchange gonna grow, I don't wanna ever be in a position where we tell someone we can't serve you.
And you're there right now, sir.
You're there now.
You're there now. You cannot handle Busy Bee right now.
Now, Busy Bee I think they soft sold their demand. When we got information or got wind of all this, we actually pulled the water use data for their site over at Live Oak, I-10 and 129. Now, that facility there is at least half, it's close to about a third to a half smaller than what they're planning on building here. Traffic wise on I-10, you're looking at 24 versus 55 on 75. So I got way more traffic on 75. So our estimation, we think we're going to be looking at, 50, 60,000 gallons a day out of Busy Bee.
That is wastewater.
Wastewater.
But I mean, they'll be using the same amount pretty much.
They'll be using water too.
Water,
so.
yeah.
We can go through those numbers in a minute, Carl. We'll walk through that thing. If we wanted to get an overdraft, we'll walk through top to bottom of the numbers and how we come up with it.
Dale, you have something you want?
And just to let y'all know, it's a long way from being a project, but you have huge impact looking at that northeast quadrant. You got a project been looking there, they're doing their due diligence now, which don't mean that they will come or it's going to be a project. But if they do, that's a huge utility use.
And that's the Ellisville you're talking about?
In Ellisville, in the northeast quadrant.
If Busy Bee goes in, they're going to draw so much traffic that's going to increase the likelihood of all those other developments. That's what's going to happen. I mean, I've been doing this for, a long time, and I've seen this stuff happen.
Oh, yeah.
They all look at traffic.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yes, sir. Right in the quadrant.
Residential or industry.
So we need, go ahead.
So, you step back and, sorry, you think about NFIP, that approach of having a new plant, 500,000 gallons a day on wastewater, 2 million on water, and you have capacity, and all the other things will work itself out, the lines, the customers. And in the utility, whether you're small, you're medium or big, you always want to have capacity for start with the land, like you said. So, and that's what Ellisville's about. You got to have the capacity, and then you got to figure out how to fund it. And all that stuff works itself out. It really does. And I can picture, living in small towns where you have moratoriums because you couldn't build. Somebody mentioned that a minute ago. You never want that. That was a small beach community that you don't want to chasing the plant that you're building out at North Florida. We had to get a temporary plant one time like that, 6-7 years. You never want to chase capacity. And so what we're here is chasing capacity. Everyone's staying here.
Mhm.
So if we walk through the numbers of kind of what we did, and Carl, we were looking at that. If we start there, we know what water numbers are currently, and that's what we'll list on the top left. So we start with the water numbers. You don't always know sewer numbers because sometimes sewer is measured and sometimes it's not. And, on a macro level, when the utility gets built out, you got some residential, commercial, 75, 80% of water use becomes sewer use. You'll lose some through evaporation. People have, that commercial buildings have evaporation on cooling towers. You'll have some people you'll have the leaks. You'll have some people using, outside water. An industrial facility is different, but Ellisville is a mixture of everything. So we can get, about 80% of sewer being water going forward, but everything's different there. So we'll start from the water and we look at 2020 and Trevor's looked at these numbers, correct me anywhere if I go wrong, that's okay. He's been studying for months. But there's been about 12% growth annually the last 3 to 5 years, all right? So you start off, you got actual numbers and Stacy can confirm, you believe the meter in Ellisville is fairly accurate, right?
Yeah, 2023 is pretty close. In fact, I just got the numbers last night. I haven't done the math, but yeah.
So 103,000 gallons per day, whether that's 103, 105, it's kind of, it's in the wash. And historically growing 12%, but that's a mixture of everything. So we said, okay, but how do you grow going forward? I think 1 or 2 meetings ago, we talked about the Beaver studies out at University of Florida. People use population projections and there's a low, a medium, a high, and that might change it from 1.5% to 3% a year. That's not what Ellisville's about. Ellisville's unique growth. And we can't really replicate the past at 12% because 12% was a mixture of everything. So what we did here for conceptual looking at is we just raised 3% a year on the Ellisville column going forward. So you take 103,000 and that's for not the unique stuff. That's just for normal organic growth of somebody connected here or there. Then we added FDOT on the water side because you picked up FDOT. We wrote through 2023. We might be a year off on that.
We picked them up, officially, we picked them up in February.
Okay, so we put it the right way.
And over the last year, they've averaged 31,000 gallons.
We keep on hearing 31,000 and what about a day? That's not a day.
No, not a month. No, it's a day. Yeah, whatever I sent you the other day. I thought I sent you all the numbers.
Yeah, it's a day.
30,000 and some change per day.
Let's look at that number. Trevor, look at that if you got it in front of you. But, so we put 12,000 and that's the problem with, that's counting the 100 and that's part of your 103?
Yes, now everything's part of.
Okay. All right. So we'll look at the FDOT and see if we got the FDOT correct. But we added FDOT about 12 to 15,000 on the water demands. That might be a little bit high there. It might be double count there, but it's still in the wash. And then Fort White, which is the 12-inch water main, you have a lot better measurements in the last year or so, and you're getting about 75,000 gallons a day. So that's the yellow marker on here. So you got to add the Fort White in 2024. You're going to start adding that. It's going to be coming from Ellisville water plants, right? Everybody correct me wrong. So then you start saying, well, once that grows, just grow that at 3% for a conceptual look. You start going down the next 7 years. And then you got the large commercial customer, the Busy Bee, the unique customer at 60,000 and grow that a little bit. You know, there's so many people moving and driving up F75 between FDOT and Busy Bee that will grow a little bit over time. You know, it won't be instantaneously the max capacity. Then you got the associated commercial growth directly related to that interchange that everyone was talking about, and that's the last column. So that's kind of how we come with the numbers. When we're thinking out loud here, we might be double counting 10,000 gallons, which I wish we had a problem only 10,000 gallons. Yeah, and this is all estimates. Any projection is never right. It's just the good conceptual. So you look at that, and then the red line, and we'll go down the graph, kind of represents where we really got to start looking at the cup. So you got two restrictions at Ellisville Water. We go to the graph underneath there. So there's a cup limit, 222,000 gallons a day, and there's an FDEP limit of 320,000 gallons a day. And then there's probably an operational reality limit. You know, those are the limits the plant's allowed. And I don't know, Stacy, if you're comfortable enough to say, can that plant really operate on a peak day at max load or not? Or a lot of times the plant be rated here, but can it really operate well at that?
No.
So we drew the red line. So that's the first one. That's the cup limit. That's a regulatory requirement and a DEP limit. And then you go down to the blue dot on the left, starts in 2020. The historical growth show that you're going up 12%, and you get to that about on 2023, there's a blue dot there, and that's like the 103,000, 115,000 gallon type number. And whether it's 103 or 115, that probably changes from January to December, the way things are growing here. You know, we're probably growing that sort of number. And it shows that the first thing we got to look at, if Fort White comes in and you had a big commercial unique development like a Busy Bee, the cup has to be evaluated and required. And that sometimes is challenging, or is always challenging. There's different ways of doing that.
There's sometimes it's more, it's all about now.
And I don't know if anyone's looked at that yet. We looked at that yet at all? The cup on increasing that. And then you go after that, then you got to increase well and plant capacity on the water side. The land on the water is usually a little bit easier. It's well siting and, but it's not as complicated as wastewater siting typically, but you got to make sure you got good additional wells and maybe states you can add if you think, I don't have the well capacity in my head right now at the moment, but.
Let me ask you a question. Now, I know, and I don't remember the exact number, but Fort White has a cup also.
That's a wonderful idea.
So, I mean, could that cup be used at Ellisville?
Well, I know.
Been Ellisville providing the work for Fort White?
It's gonna have to be evaluated. The way the district handles that is it's based on the location of the well. Okay?
Yeah.
So
Well, I think that probably needs to be looked at before we run that line from Ellisville to Fort White. We might be better off to spend that money toward a well field in Fort White.
Well,
You know what I mean?
that's what I'm saying, this whole thing is shifted.
I understand that, but we need to,
And it's,
we got to get the shit with it though.
it's shifted the focus.
Well, look back, it's gonna be a good plan today.
It's happened over the last week or
That's
two.
right.
Greg, and that's important. I think that's one of the things you all really need to get on, find out whether we need to run that line from Ellisville to Fort White or just put a water well right there at Fort White.
Well, I want to go back to y'all's asking about the cut. The way the cut works is it's based on your withdrawal points. So right now you have a cut for, town of Fort White has one for their wells.
Right. And if I'm not mistaken, it's 2 million gallons, huh? 2 million gallons.
That's correct. They got it early.
Right.
So back then you could ask for the moon and they gave it to you.
Mhm.
Now the water management district, Connie, you haven't got any correspondence from them.
No.
They're going around and starting to claw those numbers back, okay? They haven't got to the town of Fort White yet. We're working with the town of Trenton. They're clawing theirs back. So, you gotta go in there and fight for it to keep any sort of capacity on it. They want to eliminate it. The county got 2 million. That was a fight that took 24 months.
At least.
So, to get that one, where those wells were, we were able to use some drainage wells that the county put in over here at Lake Harris to do some offset. We did some other offset, to be able to make that happen and get the 2 million. So whenever you go down there and you say, well, can we utilize the cut at the town of Fort White? You got to run the analysis and it's not going to be a 1-for-1. Because of where Ellisville is, they're going to be looking at, what we have to analyze is groundwater flows, and we have to look at impacts to certain gauges on the Santa Fe River, because that's part of Santa Fe Basin, both of those locations are. So obviously Fort White's 10 miles to the west and south is going to impact a different section of the river versus where Ellisville is. And plus Ellisville, I think, is probably closer to the river than Fort White is.
Yeah, it
Actually,
would be.
in distance,
Yeah.
crow flies.
I think it would be.
It'd be right close.
They're close,
Yeah,
but
very close.
I think Ellisville might be a little bit closer,
Ellisville's real close to Olustee Creek, which feeds the Santa.
Right.
you know. So that's the analysis that's gonna have to be done to be able to do that. One of the things that, we've been talking internally in our office is the town did have a commitment from the water management district at one point in time for some property to put a well field on. It has not been investigated. I don't think we need to let go of that. We need to try to keep that,
That's what I was just,
that commitment. And there may be, or there not may be, I'm convinced that there will be other well fields that we will need to build in the future, more so than what we've already got today.
that's exactly where I was fixing to go. We got the line going down 18. You're gonna still about have to go down 18 if you come from Moore Hill Road, down to the new 18. We're treating water in Fort White now. You can still treat water in Fort White and pump it from Moore Hill.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't, if we're looking at the county as a whole, don't think your 1, 2, 3 well fields you got today is what you're gonna have, all you're gonna have tomorrow. This is gonna be, as you grow, you're gonna have to expand. It's kind of like, you get married, it's just you and your wife, and you can live in a 1-bedroom house, you start having youngins, then you got to have 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms.
But we do need to, we need to look at that right now before we, I guess what I'm saying, we need to spend our money as wisely as we can spend it. And if that's what, where we need to go, because we know how much trouble it is to get these cups. We don't need to give one up, and we need to take advantage of it. What I'm looking at right here now, all the water in Ellisville is gonna need to be in Ellisville.
So,
Well, Greg, what would be the radius property we need to find within a certain radius of Ellisville for a sewer treatment plant? How,
I would try to find something within a couple of miles of there.
Greg,
I'd
let me
run
ask
more than
you,
that if I could.
how important is it to be as close as you can to the current bank? Is that relevant?
Can I give an anecdote? I can picture, I-10, the Publix warehouse, I-10. I don't know, about 7-8 miles west of 295 in Jacksonville, almost all the way to downtown Jacksonville. I worked on that line 25 years ago. That's 25 miles. Is that ideal? No, but it worked. It worked perfectly fine,
You can go further, but I think we've got plenty of vacant land within a couple of miles.
How much land do we need?
So, we could certainly look at that, but I wouldn't start something probably less than, for the future of this thing, I would start with less than 100 acres.
I was thinking 200, but
You know, well, I mean, the more the barrier.
So I'm just trying to get a benchmark. So I have land acquisition agents on staff, right? We do it every day. Whatnot. I just need a benchmark, so I'm looking within 5 miles of where we're currently at, is that what we're saying?
That's fine.
We're looking at ideally closer.
The closer we are, the better off. It'll work.
Yeah,
I realize that you're gonna end up having to put a lift station in, you're gonna pump it back to where we're gonna treat it at.
But just give them a minimum 100 acres,
Yeah, they're
not to exceed 5 miles. But I'll jump.
And the key is to figure out how we're, the effluent, the effluent, and that's changing.
It's more than just finding dirt. So we got to find the right dirt.
Yeah.
But somebody draw me up the parameters, I'll jump over it. And that's what we do.
I mean, we can look at it, we can take a look at the soils map and say, this area would be good for that.
I need somebody to give me that.
Yeah. Don't go pick me a spot with, you know.
and Kevin, there was a piece of property that, and I don't know who owned it, was gonna give the county first refusal on 200 acres. When the 200 acres, Rocky,
Yeah, that was, right there at the, right there at Ellisville.
Yeah.
We had looked at it, we looked at it a couple, 3 or 4 months ago, about maybe doing something with it, industrial park. something like that.
We're still in contact with the realtor.
Yeah. So, but now there is some wetlands on that piece of property. So we really need to do our due diligence before we purchase it, if we do look at that piece of property, it's vacant.
The challenge you got is now that things are starting to boom down there, the cost of dirt around there, I'm hearing 6 digits.
Well, that might be why you get a little further away.
Right. That's why.
But you're gonna spend the money and pipe for dirt, you know what I'm saying? So,
Oh, you got to balance that out.
Yeah.
There's no cut and fast rule. You just got to try to figure out what that is. And obviously, we don't need it on a main highway. We just need to have access, we can get to it.
so Greg, you guys gonna do 2 things. You gonna get with Storm Real Water Management and find out whether it might be better to not run the water from Ellisville to Fort White.
We can discuss the issue of the cuts between those. We'll get with Stacy and get a meeting with them and with Warren. Warren handles that stuff, and then
I think the way to handle the dirt would probably find a piece available, do some borings on it and make sure it's what we need before we purchase it.
Yes, sir.
So, Kevin, I think probably we look around, see what's available and take a piece. And then we just put it in the
What about the
contract.
view?
We have time to do our due diligence.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing the committee needs to understand, the difference in Ellisville and all the other locations discussed here, this is real.
It's real. It's happening now.
Right, this isn't a prospect. This is, folks are saying we're getting shovel ready in November.
you got to understand that. I ain't gonna build a new plant. We ain't gonna acquire land to have something ready.
No, we're gonna keep
So
our plan.
what's our plan in between?
In the short term, what
Yes.
capacity do we have there at the existing plant?
Let's make sure we're saying this right. They're building a 70,000 square foot facility. but it's gonna take them a hot minute to do.
I guess my question would be, do we have the land available right now where we're at to expand that plant?
Well, this is what we,
200,000 gallons.
what we were looking at. Right now, you're expanding it to 50.
Right.
That's what you have today. Y'all are looking at doing another 25.
25 to 50.
Stacy, do you have anything definite on that yet as far as had any preliminaries? Have you gotten anything that says what it would be to add that other 50 to the existing there?
No.
So,
Do we need that 50 or do we need that 100? Because we all know.
I'm trying to find out or figure out what he might have gotten to see.
There was an agreement for the existing contract to move forward up to 75,000 gallons, from 50 to 75. We did not land the grant. We did not make the grant. There's other grants out there. The current contract, we went from 25 to 50, agreed to a change order, like their word, to honor existing prices, take it on to 75,000. Funding's not in place right now.
So there's no way that you can pump water to Fort White and do B and B at your existing package plant.
That's what.
The water treatment plant.
That answers your, I mean, that's your water treatment. That answers your question right there. You can't.
The question for me is, if to answer your question, I think you could go to 100,000 on the existing side. I believe that. The question is how much do you want to spend scabbing on, knowing the end of the day, that's not going to be your actual solution.
Yeah, but
At the end of
The answer to that is we got to do what we got to do for the immediate, the future time now, and worry about the future with a treatment plant.
But also, if you do have the 100,000 or 200,000 gallons operational plant, like that, you can continue to use that in the future and still use your other plant. Yeah.
But what I get from, my fear is you won't even get the ground dry, expanding this and another business. What Greg said a while ago, I think it's just going to dominate. I think we're going to continue being here talking, what do we do for the future? What do we do right now?
that's what Brian was saying. You don't want to be chasing capacity.
But we know in reality,
Yeah, we are.
to buy property, design and build a plant, that's probably 2 to 3 years down the road at best, 3 years at best. So you're gonna have to do what you got to do at the plant there now
I get that.
for at least a 3-year plan.
I probably didn't say this right earlier.
Yeah.
The first meeting I attended about the B and B, I left there thinking it was a minimum of 5 years out, because all the heads with DOT was there.
Right.
Saying, guys, there's no way we can even talk about it in
Exactly.
5 years. 2 weeks later,
It's
whole Tallahassee, things happening right now.
But that's my point. Now, there's no way you can do both. On that existing water plant, Ellisville, I don't care. If you expand it to 100,000 gallons, look at this projection. I mean, you can't do it.
Now, the water plant is greater capacity.
You expand. You still have to be able to draw it out of the ground. So the couple of years.
Can handle this.
Water plant with the addition of, so roughly, you're looking at 120,000 gallons a day, and if we add Fort White in there, that's 200,000 gallons a day. We take Busy Bee, you're looking at 250,000, our average has to be 222. So we're gonna have to increase our daily average for the district, exactly. Now,
But can the plant physically handle that?
the plant, each well at the plant is 160,000 gallons a day.
Say it again.
160,000 gallons a day.
And you got how many wells?
So you're gonna need another well, you're gonna need an additional well, you're gonna need to increase your cup.
Yeah.
And I would also highly recommend looking at your hydro tank, because when you start pumping that much water through the plant, a 10,000 gallon hydro tank is gonna have a turnover rate, so you have no contact time, thus your chemical reactions, but
But for, and I hate to use the word minimal, but for not not the cost of a brand new plant, we can get by with our water plant with just a few improvements.
yes.
And that's
How long?
You're talking about increasing tankage, increasing storage supplies, pumps.
Well, we're just talking about a hydro tank, we're talking about one more well.
Yep.
Because if you have it, right now, if we're using 200 1,250 a day. He's only got the wells are 160, one well goes down and you can't make,
You can't even make.
you can't make anything.
I think what we need to see happen here is y'all and Stacy sit down and bring us back a plan that says, this is what we recommend
And how much it costs?
and how much it costs.
We have some of that today.
Yeah.
And we walk through this, and then this is, we can, some of that today, I think.
Well, let's
and we'll
just-
finalize that.
Yeah, let's talk
You
about
never-
it.
Never finalize it, you keep on moving the thing, and then we finalize it in 50 years. So, is that good to walk through that? a little bit today?
I got a question before you guys. On the permitting phase of a new plant, how much time are you talking about there and can anything be done in parallel?
Are we talking water plant? We're talking about wastewater plant.
The whole new shebang.
Can I give an input a little bit on that?
I've got a good idea, but just for everybody's knowledge.
You know, the simple answer is about 2 years. I think there's examples when things are needed that happen faster, you know, we know in times of change in 20 years where wells are getting drilled, built at the same time and getting permits, you need to in rapid growth areas. There's two things I wanted to bring up related to that, and Mr. Foreman's always both brought up too, is that, you could consolidate costs. There's pros and cons of the cup and what, and it changes over time. But we've seen where you take different well fields, you add them all up, you consolidate it. In 2012, we did that in Duval County. My experience with that was on the finance side, because you had to go make sure to pick money out of the reserves to pay for the lawyers and the professionals to make that happen. When you consolidated the 150 million gallon day cup, the district will want to have different restrictions and different type of regulatory requirements related to that. So that one option is always consolidating it. Second one's getting a new one where you're going to talk a couple of years. If you have immediate needs, you press that, you work on that. And then the one thing that, going back 5-10 minutes ago, that line from Ellisville, I would recommend keeping that long-term, because you look 5, 10, 15 years now, you want that line. You want, regardless of how operations are, you want that connectivity for reliability and building a loop. So the answer, I think, is both. I don't think you pick the well or the line. I think you got to pick a both, which all comes down to the money. How is this going to get funded? And that's what's been through my mind a lot in the last week. You can correct me anywhere.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna go back to Carl. If you're talking about a water plant, a brand new water plant, I think you're 3 years out. I mean,
Let's get the cup and all.
the cup, doing all of that stuff. I'm telling you, the cup is a pain to get with the current state of our environmental laws and regulations. It's just difficult. So I think you're looking at 3 years for that. A wastewater plant, I think, yeah, you can do that within the 2-year time
Let
period.
me ask you a question. Would it be better for the county to reach out to Swanee River Water Management about combining the cups for Ellisville and Fort White, or would it be better for y'all to reach out to them and get an answer on what their thoughts on that is?
All right. We'll have a meeting with, us and Stacy will meet with the district. I don't think whether we call for it or y'all call for it, it's gonna make a difference.
I would like to try to have a meeting. Would y'all have a meeting between now and the next meeting and just kind of give us a account of where Swanee River Water Management would be on that?
The answer is gonna be, yes, it can be done. The devil's gonna be in the detail.
And be us.
Probably a 6-month study. So that's where it's gonna be. And I'm just the process that the district has now for you to go through, it's gonna require modeling the groundwater and seeing what the impact is, because we now have minimum flows and levels on the rivers that they are evaluating. And they evaluate it, what affects that directly to them is all these withdrawals out of the ground. Now, I know, I hear that comment all the time, and a lot of it's true. Farmers can go get a well for, it seems like, for nothing. And farmers are the proverbial sacred cow when it comes to a lot of this stuff. There's a lot of laws out there that protect farmers from both the state level all the way up to the federal level. Unfortunately, we're not considered to be farmers when we're doing these utilities. So we've got to comply with all the rules.
They've got restrictions put on them as well. They say.
They do to some degree, but they still got an easier
Let me
road.
tell you, the right to farm act in Florida is a major legislation, piece of legislation. I read through it, and it gives them the right to do about anything they want to do.
They got an easier road than the rest of them.
I agree with that, but they still, they're getting restricted as well.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Greg, you indicated definitely detail I've got to think of. Like down in Ellisville, for example, that conceptual plan of that service road in lieu of the $30 million improvement. I was asked by FDOT to reach out to the property owner, and I did. Property owner's down in town, retired judge. He is willing to work with us. His wife says I'm not gonna sell one piece of dirt. Okay? So when we talk about these things, the devil is in the details, right? So I explained to FDOT, and I'm waiting on a return call from them now. Those are the type of things, all these conceptual ideas are great, but we have to prepare as if it'll happen. So when I say they're gonna build a service road in lieu of $30 million, that's what their plan is. But we got a man saying, I'm not gonna sell you any dirt, or his wife is, then all that eminent domain stuff, start talking about, that all takes time too. So in a perfect world, just for clarification, I don't want to leave it confused. In a perfect world, FDOT's gonna find the funding, I believe that's happening. Then you gotta get everybody to agree, it's gotta happen.
Well, my prediction for 20 years back is coming true. The Ellisville was gonna be the next US 90 of Columbia County. And we just got to do what we got to do to be ready for it. I mean, it's here now. We just got to do what we got to do to expand it.
Well, once again, what I learned out of this process, I went to one meeting, it was way down the line. 2 weeks later, not necessarily.
So we'll talk to the Water Management District. We'll get that information for the next meeting. We can talk about that.
Brian,
We'll work with Stacy. There's gonna have to be a interim fix to handle this for the Busy Bee. And it might be a long-term fix, I was talking about.
That's what we're gonna work on.
That's what we're gonna.
a long-term fix. Did I understand you to say that we need to keep that line going to Fort White?
I look at things 5 and 10 years down the road, and sometimes it's like, I've been here a long time, you knew 20 years ago happened. When I come in here, I didn't know this area that well for the last, and I see it,
Go both ways.
and you see this area, it has to be connected.
Make some of the cut.
And regardless of,
let's let one person talk at a time.
I think
We can't hear you.
regardless of the entities, it's physics. If you got a wastewater plant right next to a pump station, why go to the other county or town, put it next to it? You got something up here. Down there, that line is a major corridor that you want connectivity on a transmission. I'll call it transmission, like on the electric side. You gotta have transmission, regardless of what utility owns them. You gotta have the connectivity for backup, and you want some sort of loop. So I believe you need that line. It's up and moving. I wouldn't stop it. You got the funding for it. I'd move forward with that. I don't know enough about the wells at Fort White because I haven't been focused on that. But, we know the last meeting that we showed that we're gonna have to have another plant long-term between town of Fort White and Three Rivers. There'll be another plant, water and wastewater plant. So there needs to be siting there. If you look out 20 years from now, it needs to be there. So maybe the wells, instead of the town of Fort White, might move over to there. Maybe the well feels better, right? So,
And you can interconnect these, and there's a lot of positives to having interconnectivity between these systems, so. Brian's correct. I mean, there's still a need for that water main, how we make sure we meet all these capacities. That's the question that's got to be answered. It's kind of throwing a monkey wrench in it, but we just got to figure that part of it out now.
Yeah, but a lot of that will depend on your answer you get from Storm River Water Management about the transfer of the cut.
Let me ask you this, Greg, and I was just verifying what I think I know, but it would be contingent on the town of Fort White also. There's property out there at Mora Hills.
I think that's the water
The
management.
site's about 100 acres.
Yeah,
That's the water management property.
They've already conveyed it to the town.
Okay, so it has been conveyed to the town. Okay.
The town doesn't use it, but it has been conveyed to the town specifically for that.
would a well site there be beneficial since that connectivity lines coming down that way anyway, isn't it? Aren't you coming down,
Coming straight down 18, but coming down 18, you're not far off of 18, Tuscaloosa.
right, 2.5 miles?
If the line that's running down 18 is potable, you don't want to mix it with raw water.
You can't make it
You almost want to put a treatment facility at Moore Hill site if you're going to mix it in with the line that runs down 18.
Sure.
Yeah, but I mean, but what needs to happen, that probably could be beneficial, yes.
I was talking about the cost limit to help share the 2 million that Fort White's got.
That could all play into it, yes, sir. You're exactly right, but that could all play into it. What needs to happen to know whether or not that's a good place to do it is to actually go drill a test well and let's see what water we got there, what kind of quality we got there. If it's as simple as, putting a little bit of chlorine in it to treat it, then yeah, we just tie it into the other line and you can manifold it in and you got, it's more redundancy for us.
Yeah.
Greg, is it logical to think that there's a bunch of grants there to cover all this? I mean, I'm hearing a lot of money.
Me too. That's what contracted a lot of this stuff, at least, from our side, we haven't gotten to that part yet, but when you start putting dollar figures to all this stuff, we're doing a master plan, looking at, as far as a reasonable time frame of 10 years and a maximum out there at 20 years. There's not enough grant money to do everything that we're talking here, guys. At some point in time, we're going to start floating some bonds or whatever else. And all that's going to be predicated on where our development is and where our users are. But you're going to have to.
Grant money, you need to add another year onto your time scale.
Well, I know the original plan you presented for the wastewater for Fort White, Three Rivers and tie it all in. In that plan, you showed where if you went and borrowed the money to put it in, the plan, you could recoup that financing to fund that through the plan. So, I mean, the fact that we're gonna do all of this with grant money, I just don't.
No, you're not gonna be able to
I
do that.
mean, at some point, you're gonna have to do some kind of a special district or a loan or something to pay for some of this. That's not saying we can't do a lot of it with grant funding, but that's why we depend on Fort White for grants and stuff too. And that's why it's so important that we have a meeting with the council down at Fort White to make sure everybody's understands what's going on and on the same playing field, and let them know what the issues are, and where we're at on all that. There's nothing like talking, the whole two boards talking face to face, and then hearing everything that's going on with what we're trying to get accomplished here.
Well, the big advantage we got with getting the grants that we've gotten is it gets you up and running. So you got it starting. You're not starting, right out of the blocks. You got some momentum to get started with that's not costing you money. As you get the thing going, then the engine keeps running, it keeps fueling itself, so to speak. And then you've got money that you can go out and you can bond those improvements, and then it turns around and pays for, that debt service is in there. And I think we sent a spreadsheet to Stacy this week, Kevin and David, outlining that as far as the county's overall system for there to review and look at and provide us some feedback on, and then we can update that. But utilities run that way. Brian, you can kind of fill in there.
Yeah, I think that, and I might be up a little bit, it's maybe 40 million, maybe closer to $50 million a grant. And that's been, that's a start. And then long-term debt to asset ratio of 50% of water wastewater utility is good. So you can say, well, if you got 50 million over time, borrow another 50, you got $100 million infrastructure in. And then you run through the cash flows and how much you got to have for debt service. If you need $6 million a year of debt service on that, you basically need 2 times the multiplier. I need $12 million of revenue for a $100 million investment. And I did, send just a kind of a worksheet that we could get exact numbers, or not exact numbers, better numbers, and refine that. So there's a point in time, and the way it works is you bond fund money for capacity, large environmental projects, and then you use current year revenues for the monthly billing to pay for fleets, IT systems, the reoccurring capital. That's your long-term model. As you grow, things change at first. It's almost like buying a new car. You earn a warranty for 4 or 5 years. So you're not putting much R&R. You don't have to fully fund depreciation the first 4, 5, 7, 8 years. Some utilities made a mistake and wait too long to start funding those ongoing things, the fleet or the depreciation to get them behind. But so you look at, you got this great opportunity, you got $40, $50 million of grant, and then you got to get some revenues coming in. The good thing about Busy Bee or someone like that, you're going to get some revenues coming in. Then you got to make sure you got the right rate structure. Capacity fees here are, they're certainly higher. I think Stacy and team worked on that, and Dave and Kevin last year. Capacity fees aren't enough to pay for a $60 a gallon wastewater plant that you're building right now under grant money. They're probably more at a $12, $15 a gallon. So you got to work all through that, and the more everybody works together, then you got economies of scale, you got lower O&M costs, and run through that one. So I believe bond funded money is the only option for this area to grow in the utility business, in addition to keep on getting the grants. And then you also need seed money to keep operations. Greg, you mentioned that in another county too, and I'll put some numbers on paper. You're going to need $3 or $5 million a year up front, the seed money to pay for the operations and early on over the next first 3, 4, 5 years until the revenues create. So you need money to build the infrastructure, and you need a little bit of seed money to pay for operations while the revenues catch up year 6, 7, or 8. But it's a good opportunity. It's a challenge, but it's a great opportunity.
Kind of wrap Ellisville back up, back to the map. The red area is the current area that the county has designated for development on this map. We think there needs to be some lines run on that map, shows some dash lines. We do show connections, basically, if you go out all 4 legs of it, 238, 441 north and south, and Howell Road, or Hurlong Road there. And those are future connections. But for the immediate future, we need to concentrate inside the red box. There needs to be some loops made. Right now, the way that thing is basically set up, we have one crossing on I-75. Correct, Stacy?
Yep.
We need to create another loop. In our opinion, it needs to go, we need to work with Busy Bee to get an easement on the north side of their property and go along that, or just beyond that. We can either work with Busy Bee, or there's a subdivision just to the northwest of there. I forget the name of that road, but we can go down that road and then cross over, and then where this DOT planned parking lot is have an easement along that property there and connect back. That will put us right across from 238 there, and then that will set us up to run down 238. Those are lines that we think are in the immediate future that should be done. The new road that DOT wants to build that we were just talking about, that's going to be a very hot corridor. When that gets built, with all that traffic going to Busy Bee, somebody's going to go to that property owner and make them an offer that you might say it's not for sale.
Right.
Everything's for sale, just how much. And somebody's going to give them a dollar figure that they can't turn down. So while we're building the road, I think we would be remiss if we didn't go ahead and put our water and sewer down that road. And an example of that is when 47 was built, 4 lanes south of town. City of Lake City was asked to put water and sewer down there, and they didn't. And today, we're trying to figure out how we get water and sewer down 47.
And Greg is not exaggerating on that. They'll sit right there. We offer to give them the money to do it, and they pay us back. Am I right there?
Right. So,
When it was under construction. And now we begging to try to get it in there and don't have the right of way to do it with.
David, let's, let's talk, I know we don't have anything to do with the sewer at 75 and 47. But I keep getting asked where we're at on that. Why don't we have sewer there by now? I mean,
I can give you an answer. The city picked two pump stations. There was a delay on the one over by Ring Power, waiting on some transformers and some equipment. They've submitted for a grant to extend the force main from those two pump stations, the one off of Arrowhead and the one over by Ring Power, to cross 47. They've not heard back yet on the status of that grant. That grant would be to actually just put in a force main. So they get funding, it's waiting on funding. Now, that's not putting in pump stations on the other side of 47. It's just putting in a force main. Whoever then would develop on the other side.
so right now, with all the work and pipe they put in, they don't have any sewer at all at 75 and 47 available without.
They have a pump station for sewer right next to Ring Power. A pump station for sewer in that industrial subdivision off of Arrowhead that Daniel Kraft owns.
Mhm.
I can't remember the name of it. But if you go down that road, halfway down that road, there's a pump station. So there are pump stations there. They're gonna have to put in a gravity. I don't need to get into too much. They're gonna have to do a
No.
gravity.
No. The answer to that question is no.
It's almost there.
Yeah, but it's been almost there for a year, hasn't it?
Over here.
Yeah.
I know we've been working on a development there in the southwest quadrant for a while, waiting on it.
I mean, I guess what I'm saying, this is the kind of stuff we need to see. We need to look forward to see and prevent from happening. Because, I mean, what's going on out there, to me, is just ridiculous. I mean,
Well, that's why we're saying what we need to do is concentrate inside this red box and make sure that we can serve this area. Because this is gonna be, you're gonna see other related developments to that Busy Bee want to come in there. We're gonna see some hotels, some brand new hotels down here.
oh, yeah, oh, I know.
You know. You know, that 55,000 cars a day, you know, back to the Busy Bee. Their big thing is their bathroom.
Well,
I don't know if anybody's here has been in their bathroom.
I've done work for them for years, and I'm gonna tell you.
They're better than Buc-ee's on their bathroom.
Oh, yeah, but anybody that stops to get gas, and they're gonna have, I mean, I've seen the plan for the gas outlets, I mean, what, 130 gas outlets, I think, right?
Yes.
And,
I spent Friday with the general manager of Busy Bee, and he told me what all they got planned, and
that's what I'm saying, everybody stops going to the restroom, you know that. It's just, you try whatever, all of us try. Stop getting gas, you go to the restroom, you know, it's just, and when you start having that many people stopping at that intersection, there gonna be multiple businesses wanting to capitalize on that traffic.
that's what I'm talking about.
So,
The amount of traffic they're gonna have going in and out of there, people pay attention to that,
oh, yeah.
and
Another supporting factor of the hotels is truck drivers do like to sleep in hotels. There's a lot of truck capacity at the Loves, the additional parking lot they're putting out there, Truck Stops of America. There's gonna be a need for a hotel at some point.
And that is the difference between Busy Bee and Buc-ee's. Buc-ee's do not allow trucks. They are gonna have trucks.
Oh, they're gonna allow trucks too?
My understanding, yes, sir.
Oh, I thought it was gonna be, I
They're
thought,
gonna build truck parking too.
Yeah.
There's 3 different truck parkings proposed.
Yeah.
You got the 75 that we're working on with the FDOT. There's Busy Bee, and then there's the one up there at Red Area.
so they're gonna have showers and all of that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I thought so. Well,
The trucking industry, truckers do not always want to sleep in their trucks.
David, we know what the revenues just from Love.
Yes.
I mean, this is,
And this is gonna probably be double the revenue of Love or triple it.
Very possible.
the gentleman told me Friday, y'all know the one over at I-10. Y'all know how new that thing is? They're fixing to tear that one down. They want to build the same size over there.
If
If they can get the land north of there, they're gonna build a new building, the north of there, where that building sits today, is gonna be fuel islands and whatnot.
Well, and I'm sure it's true, but I've been told that is the busiest truck stop in Florida right now, right at I-10
129?
and 129.
Busy.
Clarify what Greg said, they're not adding on. They're tearing it down.
Oh, I know, yeah. Well, I guess what I'm saying, making that statement is, I'm not afraid to go borrow some money to do some of this work. I mean, I want to grant fund all we can, but like I said, we know what the revenues just from Love's of us. So I think there's some opportunities, like he said, for doing some bonds or something. But that's why it's so important that we move forward with this regional utility. That's why it's so important we move forward with it. So we need a standalone utility that's making these, making decisions. And I say it all the time, get politics out of it, get politics out of it.
All right, so we're gonna get with the Water Management District, we'll talk about the cut. We're gonna look at short-term improvements to our water plant and whatever the plan will be for our wastewater system in the short term.
Right.
Stacy's gonna pull a rabbit out of his hat, so.
Well,
Good plan.
Package.
Mr. Chairman, Stacy at the start of our meeting said that the piping and all is going out to bid in the next couple of weeks.
The bids are moving, obviously.
Yeah, bids are due back next week.
So if we're in the middle of early on the decision, there was a lot of banter back and forth about running the water line from Ellisville to Fort White, whether or not to. Do we have, like you were saying, do we have a clear direction of which way we
well,
go?
I think we will, once we're at the next meeting, they're gonna bring us back the data.
Will the bids be open by then?
Mr. King, if I may, just because you open bids, one more step. You award a bid.
I understand.
You can put it on that as long as you need to.
That's what I'm trying to get clarification on.
Yeah, we'll definitely make sure that's the direction we're moving forward before we award that bid.
Right.
Yeah.
I would think we'd want to get that report back and kind of see which way we go before we actually take that final step on that. But that's just gonna be, another week, because we'll meet again in 2 weeks now.
2 weeks, yeah. Okay. But I think, listening to Brian, seems like it probably would be the best direction to go ahead and run that line and work at the same time with combining the cups or either increasing the cup at Ellisville.
Well, it all depends on what the Horn Water Management tell
Yeah.
Greg when they meet with him. We can make that decision then, based on
Yeah.
the information we get.
Connie, I was told yesterday that the meeting on the 10th with the town of Fort White is not gonna happen. Or 11th, yeah. It's not gonna happen. Now, I told David, we got a meeting on the 17th. It's a night meeting, county commission meeting. We would love for the town of Fort White council to join us at that meeting for a discussion on moving forward with interlocals for the water tour and maybe with the forming of the utility, regional utility for the county and the town of Fort White. If there's any way you can make that happen, we can do it first at 5:30. Or we can do it, whatever time we can meet for an hour and then do it at 6:30 if that's better for them.
So, yeah, I mean, whatever time the town wants to start the joint meeting, we can stop the county commission meeting, do the joint meeting, and then come back to the town commission.
Well, isn't the point that we're having a meeting, I hear all these innuendos out there, and I want to hear from the town council whether they're in or out before I spend any more money. It's just that simple.
Well, first off, the original communication to me was that the meeting on the 11th was going to be a workshop. Now, then I was on vacation and received text that it was changed to a joint special meeting. And my comments were a special meeting at 10 a.m. doesn't work for our town council because several are working. And it's very difficult for them to get off in the middle of the day to attend a special meeting as such. So my recommendation to David yesterday was to schedule something for an evening meeting,
That works for us.
which is much more conducive to attendance. Okay. The second thing is that if we could get some information ahead of time, an agenda, et cetera, and some supporting documentation of what's going to be discussed so that it's not just cold up front. I'm sure our attorney would like to review some of the items that would be discussed, et cetera, et cetera. So that being said, I'm sure that they'll be amenable to doing this if those parameters can be accommodated. And where would you, at the school board building?
That's what we have now, unless
Yeah, we just go there with this.
Because I know before we had a joint meeting at the Fort White Community Center a couple of years ago. So
we
that's
discovered
what I was wondering.
noticing requirements to do it outside the city limits is,
Right. So the
we've
school
already got
board,
this meeting scheduled at the school board that night.
okay,
So what we'll do is we'll prepare an agenda, just like we do a board agenda.
Mhm.
Anything you want to add to it, just let us know. Put it out a week ahead of time, so there's a 7-day notice.
so by the 10th.
Yeah, I mean, it'll go out.
Okay.
Yes. Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I thought.
Yeah, we can do that.
All right. Let's go to, Fort White water treatment. Okay. Yes, I covered that with the, how about Fort White?
If you look in your packet, there's some email exchanges from the DEP.
Yeah, I
I
see.
just want to let everybody know that the last correspondence I have with Mr. Vo is he will be sending out a permit, a pilot permit to us for Fort White. Use the Codalock light in place of the green sand to help with our PPHMs and our HAA5. How long is that test for pilot? I requested a year, but we'll see what they come back with.
So when do you think you'll implement that?
As soon, I've already got the quotes for install. I've already got the material on site, the town bought the material. It's just a matter of when that permit gets in my hand.
So you'll have some test results back in 2 months?
60 to 90 days, yes, sir, I should be able to. Yeah, because I'm interested myself. Me and you spoke about this. So if this meeting works, maybe something that we need to look at moving forward, other facilities. Bill.
Does that material have a shelf life not being used, just sitting there? It's fine.
I would assume though, it probably does have a useful life once it's being utilized.
You say this is instead of green sand, you're using this product?
Yes, sir, we're trying to use this product to
And
help.
what is this product again?
It's actually called Codalock Light. Developed in Germany about 5, 6 years ago. It's just kind of becoming more and more popular over in the States. It helps with your iron, it helps with your tanning, it helps with your DDTs.
So it is being used in other places already,
Yes, sir.
but it requires a permit to use it.
You have to change the permit, yes, because right now we're using sodium permanganate and peroxide with the green sand and carbon filtration system. So now we need to take out the green sand, add a different filter media, which means a pilot program.
Here in the States, it's like, we kind of got stuck in a rut as far as what we were doing. Europeans have been more receptive to trying new technology, so they've been kind of developing them, and then they kind of get all the bugs worked out of them, and then we bring them over here and try them. So not wrong or indifferent, that's kind of the way that's been working. We did have Fort White as far as master planning aspect on that too. That was your first 2 sheets there. First sheet's a water system layout. The biggest thing we see on the water system now, obviously, assuming that the water main gets built, so that we address the water supply issue there. The biggest thing from the towns on the water system is we need to close some of those loops out. A lot of that when it was built originally were just fingers from the power plant, so there's no looping. So that needs to take place. You'll see there's a planned development on the west side that would expand that. I think the biggest thing is the second sheet. We previously shared, the first phase where the 3 lift stations are. We've added, 2 more areas, the orange area and the tan area, to the eastern side of town. I think the biggest thing I keep getting asked about the school. Someone needs to, determine it is the town, or the utility going to end up acquiring the school property or not. We've shown that as a boxed out area there, at roughly 6 to 10,000 gallons a day. That could be accommodated, but basically what we're looking at is we'd end up with a lift station over here in the orange area and the tan area in the future and a collection area, for that. That could be, expanded as required kind of thing. So, we do have, the current grant, for the town is, $5 million. And that's to include the first phase and the first phase of the, wastewater plant. And then they have been awarded, we don't have an agreement yet, an additional $4 million and change as well. So,
If I can add that, so 2 weeks ago, I missed this meeting. I was at DEP office with the program manager. I met a gentleman, spoke on the phone the prior month, several times, very helpful. And then Connie's come over tomorrow and meeting with our grant manager, Sydney, myself, and Trevor Rich will come in. We're going to go through all the documents that we need to move forward with, kind of closing the loop on the original grant and also to put in for the new 4.5 million. It's 4.5, right?
4.6.
4.6. Okay. So we're going through that tomorrow. Just kind of work a meeting, laying everything out. And I think, and Connie can correct me anywhere I'm going to keep my notes here. When I met the gentleman, he's the engineer. I've never heard so many financial questions from an engineer in my life. All he talks about is revenues. I say, oh, he had a lot of it. He's very helpful. Revenues, expenses, they really, from the grant side, have seen facilities over the time and over this. So I thought I had that off. And where they get them running and don't have the revenues, expenses, or the capacity, whether it's people or money, to take care of them. So there's 4 requirements that have to go to an ordinance for resolution. And one of them is the rate structure, which you're adopting the county rate structure. The second one, and help me out here, I got it written, but second was the mandatory connection.
Correct.
Apologize. And second, the mandatory connection. The mandatory connection is not 100% mandatory. You'll have provisions in place for people at different times not to connect. And then the third one was really showing that you got revenues and expenses or a methodology, whether that's an interlocal agreement, whether it's you hire I'm hypothetical, whether you hire a firm to operate it. They just want to make sure that with that grant that you've got an ability to operate on day 1 and year 1 and year 5 and year 10. That's what they want. And the example that he said was and Connie and I spoke about this, the one on the interlocal on the water agreement has a little bit more details and dollar costs. The interlocal currently, which was done about a year ago or so, with the town and county on the wastewater, was more of a cooperation agreement and talks about it, but not as much detail. So somehow we got to work through that over the next month, and then Connie will take the lead on that. And then the last thing was a 4th item that we have to do: the facilities plan, the adopted facility plan. So the original facility plan that Greg and team and Mr. White before he passed, he worked on was the overall everything, 3 rivers. That is stationary. Any new facility plans over the next decade that is done under that kind of umbrella will be of a specific project. So the facility plan update they want is of this project. And this project is lift station 1, lift station 2, lift station 3, kind of 1 to 79 parcels. But he also included that he would like us, and we don't need to show him all of these projected areas, but there's probably between the 2 grants, he's open-minded to kind of adjoining those 2 grants, the 4.5.2 and the 4.5, to do this overall project, because the original grant of 5.2 is not going to be enough to do 1 through 79 parcels, the pump stations and the plant.
Brian, and this guy you're talking with, he's with,
Greg Allison, FDEP Program Manager, and he's kind of over and there's different levels. Connie works with different people too, and there's like a grant administrator, missed another one. He's overall program on clean water. Clean water is wastewater. He's been back and forth different ones. So he's the one most responsible outside the people who sign on the grants. He's got, but he's actively working on this program.
they're all with FDEP.
FDP. So we're not there, very helpful. He wants to see this, move to fruition. And the key item he said is go ahead and this updated this facilities plan, even though we're working right now on 1 through 79 relift stations, a wastewater plant up to 50,000 gallons, show an area, you don't have to design it, of an extra area or two that if there's leftover money between those two grants, that they were already approving. You don't have to go back. The town will not have to go back to get approval to spend that extra remainder money. And then you can go out and get it designed for an extra pump station to a collection area. Sorry for talking fast on that one. We're moving forward on that, and we're going to look at September to get that facilities plan adopted that would be a resolution ordinance. Probably a resolution.
Resolution, yeah.
So there's a lot to do on that, and that's why, we met a few weeks ago, and Connie's coming over tomorrow, and we're gonna just make sure we probably have to meet a couple of times, just making sure we get all the paperwork. She's already signed some certificates that to come with a capital financing plan, just numerous items that I think we're all comfortable getting it and done, but we just gotta go through every detail of that.
And our attorney, Lindsay Lander, has been out of the country since the 27th. He'll be back on the 7th of August. And he has already started with the mandatory connection ordinance, the rate structure ordinance, and we'll be giving him this for the facilities plan.
Yes. And we'll peel off one of the things we'll probably ask for this group in town specifically is peel off 1 or 2 of these projected flow areas. So this is more of a long-term planning, but the facilities plan would probably only have 1 or 2 of these extra spots where you see about 5 different ones of projected flows, 12,000 gallons, the school area, and that we'll probably pick 1 or 2 of that to say that's your next one in this project. And that's something you'll have to determine next month. Really,
Is that something that can be fluid? I mean, why would they object to looking at the whole thing and then us picking?
I think you and I will call him, and I think he's open-minded on a lot of things. And he hasn't said that proactively, but I think we could probably certainly try to get that. And I don't see why they wouldn't allow it to be.
Yeah, it just would make sense to me to present the whole
thing. And then made note that only 2 of those 4 or 5 different areas, and that we determined at the time.
Right.
Yeah, we'll try that. I think
They might
that's
be
reasonable.
more fluid with the purse strings if they see the whole
Yeah.
parameter here.
So we'll work through, and then and I envision that we'll have some joint calls with him before we finalize that.
Sure. And I understand on the 17th, is the rate structure going to be approved by the county? The rate structure ordinance?
I believe so.
Because we're going to need that for ours.
Right, I believe so.
Okay.
Question, Chairman. Sorry. To Ms. Connie.
Um,
How much money of that a little less than $10 million is projected to be left by the time the sewers plant is erected and the pipeline? Or is that separate pots of money?
Well, it is separate pots of money. One's 4.7, one's 5.3. There's 2 grants. However, they're looking at joining them together. It's going to take every dime. There won't be any.
We never gonna have enough money.
Well, that's what I was thinking, but you had said that if they was there.
Ultimately, would there be a remainder of, the first 79 and lots, and that 79 might be 78 or 81, what have you, the 3 pump stations and the 50,000 gallon train. Let's hope the quote's coming along.
The way those work, the state don't want to give money back. They want you to spend that money.
Right.
But you got, in the agreement, you got to have it documented as to what, I can't just, we can't just come up at the end and say, oh, we're going to spend $200,000 to do this. If we've got it already written in there, that if we have any, then we can spend it on there. It makes it easier on them.
Well, wasn't our first phase gonna cost more than the 5.3?
Yeah, I think what we believe, our order of magnitude is more than $7-8 million type number. But that's depending on how we bid it out and different contracts. So hopefully there's still at least, Mr. King, hopefully there's at least $1 or $2 or $3 type $1 million number. And we'll find that out when it goes for bid and details.
The second question is the water coming from Ellisville. Is the city thinking that's going to be potable or is it going to be shipped into Fort White and treated at the suspect plant?
I think the plan was that it was gonna be potable, was it not, Stacy?
Oh, it is potable.
Okay.
But it may require some treatment once it gets.
News station, something along those lines, I think was looked at.
So looking at the station, I believe, or fire station is on County Road
Yeah,
18.
we do have a booster station, but
It will go-
it is going to the plant and it's going to be rerun through the town's plant and back out through their distribution system.
Again, because town's plan is necessary to pressurize it as well. So you have enough pressure in the system to feed the town.
Going over the whole process, Stacy. Everybody understand?
Yes, so it's gonna be potable, water running down 441 and 18. There is gonna be a chlorine lift station, booster station right there at the old fire station that currently Century Ambulance is using that building. Mathematically speaking with Ricky, we do not think we're gonna need to use the chlorine, but at the same time, it's better to have it in case you do need it, in case you miss a decimal point, so to speak. At that point, we'll go into the distribution side of the plant, which is actually going to be well number 2 distribution piping. It'll tie in there. Then it'll go through the normal process of the Fort White plant. So it will be treated with peroxide and chlorine discharge and be pressurized by the high pressure pumps at the plant for the entire system.
Now, is this the filtration system that we've been having trouble or town's been having trouble with?
Well, not the filtration system, no.
Okay.
Well is what the problem is at the town. Both of the wells, actually. They have very high tannin and very high DVPs.
The issue at Fort White has always been the well. It's
Right.
hard to treat that water basically get the tanning out of it. The biggest problem we have at Fort White is the color of the water.
You got organic in the
It looks
water.
like peat.
You got so much organics and literally 120, 150 feet away from your well field is the largest sinkhole in Fort White. It's the south end water collection system for the entire Davern town. So you got a lot of bad water for those pumps as well.
Have you pulled any of the wells since you've been down there?
Yes, sir. We've had to replace them.
Have?
Yes, sir.
How bad were they?
Extremely. When I say extremely, so I went back and looked at all the records I could find from the town. Any of the wells, because one of the wells are so bad, we actually have it locked out. It's emergency use only. The other well, the one well that we're utilizing, it's a 4-inch well. And that well pump is only lasting about 3 or 4 years because the water quality is so bad. It's
Pull the well down there, Carl, and it looks like it's covered in mud.
Really?
Yeah.
That leads to the question is, why aren't we looking at another well site for the city?
Or Hills property would be the place to go.
And that's why we acquired the property.
Well,
And at some point, we
The
will.
water management gave them to the town, yes, for that purpose.
Right.
That was before the Ellisville line was even a thought. That happened.
Said I'm good friends with the chairwoman for Swanee River Water Management. So I got a little bit of background information there.
The decision to build the Ellisville line, they weighed 3 options. One was the Ellisville line, one was the site at Moore Hills, and one was to just go buy another piece of property down 47 and build a well field there. And they evaluated all 3 options.
And because for future expansion purposes of water, we basically, the board decided it would be more beneficial, money spent on piping for future expansion. Money well spent, better than drilling west at that time. But at that time, we also didn't know that DMV was gonna build a
What they doing?
truck stop at Ellisville, you know, so.
A small city.
Yeah, well,
The growth,
you know,
at the time, we didn't need to expand anything.
well, one of my favorite sayings is hindsight's 20/20. If we can all see into the future, we can make a lot better decisions on everything. You know? You just got to be able to adapt and overcome, you know, as things develop, and that's what we're looking at this time.
Everybody wins a football game on Monday morning, don't they?
Oh, yeah. But I was thinking about it though, I do agree with Brian. I still think that pipeline probably is a good plan to move forward, also for expansion purposes.
It still depends on what answer they get back on the water matter.
Long term though, yeah.
It's still a good investment, but our funding and our priorities at the moment may change that.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, we knew any sort of an answer without going in and doing a study and all of that. I mean,
They're not gonna give you
Is that
yes, we'll do this and no, we'll do that. What we're gonna find out is, all right, this is the process. This is how we're gonna have to do it. This is the efforts you're gonna have to go through to be able to do that. They'll be able to tell us, you know, can we get that? And
We need a timeline too.
to be honest with you, I think I already know what the answer is gonna be. It's gonna be the same process we went through out here at NFMIP. I don't think it's gonna be any different, but
Just to consolidate?
just
No, no.
consolidate it.
If we have to go through the same process, then we need to start looking at recharge.
Say that again?
If you're gonna have to go through the same process, you're gonna have to start looking at recharge.
Yes.
And that's what don't make sense to me. If you already have a cup for 2 million gallons, it's issued. I mean,
That don't make no difference to them now. We can get the attorneys and they start fighting it out and however long that's gonna take.
That's time and money too.
That's what I know. You can start fighting that out. You know,
yeah,
all I can tell you is just like I said, we're dealing with Trenton. They had a cut that was larger and the district come back and said, no, we're cutting it back to this. And now you got to tell us and show us and go through this process and why you need more than that. If you're not using it and they got access to the record, it's as good as anybody else. The town of Fort White's not using 2 million gallons a day. Yeah, so.
And they did the same thing to the city of Lake City.
oh, I know, but they had they had reason too. They were supposed to be,
I'm just saying,
basically, they put a reuse plan in they're not even using, so.
this is typical of the water management district. If, like Greg said, if you're not using your capacity, they'll try and claw it back. And then when it comes time you need it, it's not there and you have to go through the whole process.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't know what their benefit is for taking it away. If you're not using it, you're gonna use it one day. I mean,
Give
just.
it to somebody else.
Somebody else.
No, they use it to,
The issue, what I don't think,
their goal is to keep the water in the ground.
what I don't think everybody's become aware of is this minimum flows and levels that they've set for the rivers and the springs, what impact it has on this. Because right now it's based on what it is today. They've done their MFLs. Well, and I'm not picking on Fort White, but that's part of the discussion here. We're using 70,000 gallons a day. Well, that's what's being used. That's what the measurements are based on. If Fort White were to tomorrow start using 2 million gallons, that's going to have an impact on those minimum flows and levels, and they got no control over it.
6 months ago, the district put a observation well / height well at down in Fort White, just to assure, because of the growth that was the district's anticipating down in the south end of County.
Mr. Chair, let me give you an example just on my mind about these permitting agencies. Tomorrow morning, you're going to award the Burley Road bid. The sister job of that is State Road 6. Same firm, helped us with both projects. If y'all recall, we funded that with DOT paid back under emergency purposes, like that word. You're going to award Burley Road Thursday. You're 100 miles from even letting 6 because of permitting. That make sense? So to put timelines on something when you're having to deal with those folks is unreasonable. You don't have any control.
Oh, I know.
But minimum flows and levels, and that is driving this, and that's all the more important. But David just talked about, we're gonna have to start looking at recharge projects to be able to maintain that. Whether that's done through reuse. I'm not a big fan of reuse because I don't think you get the credit for it. I think we gotta put water back in the ground directly to be able to maximize that. And
We had a meeting.
that's all more reason for these counties to work together as far as these utilities.
We had a meeting about a year and a half, 2 years ago with this group that come in here that was gonna get these reuse well permitted and everything. Where are they at? I mean, I've heard nothing else about it with that meeting. Do you know, David?
What's that?
I sat in a meeting right in this room, with this group that we had hired to look at doing these reuse wells for putting water back into the ground. And there was some questions whether they were legal or whatever. I know, as far as one of them was at that meeting. Where are they at now? Well, I mean, I've heard nothing else. I've heard nothing from that since that meeting.
Well, I don't know where we're at on the regional recharge projects. The issue with recharge wells is not with the district, but with DEP, who requires that the water going into the wells be treated to water quality standards. So they make it so that if you, in the past, you put in a recharge well, you put in a recharge well, and it filtered out in the aquifer. And now you have to treat the water before you put it back into the recharge. That makes the cost so much more expensive.
So and during that meeting, it was Swan River Water Management, admitted they had money to put in recharge wells, but they couldn't get permits to do it with.
That's correct.
One of the things I think Columbia County in particular, but even these other counties should be having a dialogue with the district. Cannon Creek, they've made that a closed basin. We make retention ponds that are huge now because of that. We've talked about some things to change that, but my personal opinion, I don't have no data to back it up. The district ain't even studying it, but I think we're holding so much water in these stormwater ponds in a lot of areas that could go to recharge. That's not. Because Lake City sits up on top of a hill. A lot of people think, you know, when I say that, they look at me like I got two horns sometimes, but you know, if you leave town, if you leave here and go down 47, you go down the hill, you know, and, but it sits on top of a hill. And in our area of Florida, when you sit on top of the hill, you think that's the driest part, but it ain't. That's where the clay supports that hill. That's where you got a lot of percolation or perched water tables sitting up there. So in Lake City here, we hold a lot of water in some of these places because it won't perk. So the only place it could go is stuff. It don't go down in the ground.
You're exactly right. I've done numerous soil tests for septic tanks in this whole North Florida area. And you can go to a piece of property and you can always go down the hill and find good soil for a septic tank.
You go to the bottom of the
To
hill.
the bottom of the hill, find good soil. A lot of times we put the tank on top of the hill and pipe it to the bottom of the hill, put the drain field in. Because that's
For a lot of
what
people, but that's the way it is around here. Lake Jeffrey out here, closed basin, all of that drains to Lake Lona. When's the last time anybody saw much water in Lake Lona?
Mm-hmm.
Lake Lona's got a fractured bottom or something, and if we could send more water down there, that will make it to the aquifer. But I've mentioned that to the district, and as far as I know, they're not studying none of that stuff to be able to do that. And I think there needs to be a dialogue to that board over there. They need to be doing something on their end to help support the economic development of our region instead of just sitting there beating us over the head with these rules.
Well, you talk to them though, Greg, and they swear they are, but I mean, then you don't get nowhere.
anything.
I'm gonna say, if they are, I'm not aware.
I'm not either. That's what I've talked to them blue in the face, you don't get nowhere. I know several of them on the board and I still can't get nowhere.
Well, I think the recharge effort is bigger than Columbia County, it's bigger than Lake City, and we gotta work at it together and, maybe they're not gonna be the torchbearer, maybe it is, this group becomes torchbearer for that.
When everyone's talking about recharge, I'm trying to look at this number, but right now the recharge they're doing on 80 miles east is going to be $60 million for a 1 million gallon day plant.
Yep.
And I was trying to look at your capacity fees right now. I believe you correct me, I'm trying to look it up. I think your capacity fees on water might be $5 a gallon.
Yep.
And wastewater might be 7 or 8. So we're in, less than $10 a gallon for capacity fees for new capacity. And you were talking 60, or the NFLIP is $60 a gallon. So that's the challenge we got.
58.
So that's the challenge we got. When you add aquifer recharge in for,
That increases the price.
to pull the cup out, that's 5-10 fold.
What credit do you get for recharge? Well, I mean, or for reuse water, for the sewer, for the plant. What is the percentage ratio? Do you get credit for 100% or?
Well, if you go to NFMIP, the county's plan was to go to direct injection.
Mhm.
We got quite a bit of credit for that. That's how we got the 2 million gallon was the direct injection at the wastewater plant and then the wells at Lake Harris. All those drainage wells there, which those are an exception. If you got an existing drainage well, if it fails, you want to get it replaced. You can replace them 1 for 1, like for like. You don't do any of that treatment that we're talking about. So because the county had done Lake Harris, the district agreed to let us do that. Now we had to go through an elaborate analysis to be able to utilize that. And the wastewater plant, whenever you go direct injection on those are defined flows. So it's just a straight up water coming in, water going out with them. But if you're doing quote reuse where it's irrigation, then you got to model all that stuff and it's done by sprinkler. So I got a little bit that soaks in the ground, but I got a lot that gets taken up by vegetation and then a lot that just evaporates into the air because I'm spraying it out in the air. So that's what I'm not a big fan of that when it comes to trying to do recharge for getting water out of the ground.
So the injection wells are the better.
In my opinion, yes, sir. So that or dealing with stormwater, where we're holding all the stormwater up that we can put it to the ground.
Where recharge works well is if you're giving it to a customer for a process, so they're not having to take it from groundwater, they're using recharge instead.
Yeah, but all that does is reduce the amount of water you need to take out of the ground,
Exactly. That's where it's a benefit.
And I don't have no way to plan for or control that. I mean, you can encourage that type of water to be, that's still a reuse, but it's not a reuse in that we're irrigating a.
But it still counts as your cup when you pull it out of the ground, right?
It's still, yeah, when you draw it out of the ground.
So for instance, one of the plans the city had many, many moons ago was to put reuse down 90. So all those industries that used potable water for irrigation would use reused water. So they wouldn't be drawing it out of the water in the potable system. So it would save them on the withdrawal side.
They're not trying to increase, they're just trying to reduce the water demand is all they're doing in that aspect of it. We can encourage it, we can set it up, you can set rates to be able to do that. But at the end of the day, if somebody needs potable water, they gotta have potable water.
So the municipality, you're better off to develop as much farmland as you can into the water.
Well, one of the district's responses is that we need to go buy all these wells up from these farmers. Well,
that's not feasible.
That's not practical either.
What you've discovered is the farmers want to keep their wells for when the reuse system doesn't have any water. They want to be able to make sure they have the ability to irrigate whether the reuse has enough water or not.
This is where sometimes the district staff doesn't really understand. Whenever we were doing in FMIP, that was one of the suggestions is that we go we had all these solar farms coming up. A lot of them solar farms still, they had wells on, we still got wells on. They were like, we'll go buy the wells. Well, one, we can't make a farmer sell it to us. Farmer didn't sell that land, he's leased it.
Right, he's leased.
Guess what? If that lease goes up, what he's gonna do? He's gonna go back to farming that land, so he ain't gonna let that well go. So that's not an option, but they didn't understand how all that process worked. They just saw there's a well not being used and I can,
So why don't they take a couple of them then?
so
Like they do music.
They can.
it's a farmer. Back to a farmer.
But if you have a well that has a value, you're not just gonna give it up.
I understand that. I wouldn't either. I mean, you know. As what Carl was saying a while ago, and I've been hearing rumor, I don't know if this is actually true or not, but I've heard some of the farmers say that they're gonna only allow a certain number of irrigation wells per section of land in the future for farmers. Have you heard anything about that?
I haven't heard that. I mean, that's a possibility. I do know they work with, that they are, you know, I'm not here trying to beat up a farmer, but they have worked with the farmers and I mean, they give them money all the time to do this, but they have put sensors in. They don't just turn an irrigation well on, you know, 4 hours a day, every day anymore. They are controlled and they've got sensors, they got ground moisture sensors and all that they go by. They know what their spray heads are. They can actually kind of zone all that stuff out. So, you know, they work with the farmers to be more efficient with their water use.
They have basic management action plans for farmers now too, basically with the water. So, you know, but I do know they have that and they have cut down on the use of water through that program. So,
and they have a program where the farmers can apply for it and they do it all the time where they will fund them to put those controls on their wells to be more efficient water users and all that. So farming's become a lot more scientific than what it used to be. So, all right.
anybody got any more questions or anything they want to add before we adjourn?
Sir.
Yes, we adjourn.
They say you can't sleep till the feels fit.